हेलो हेलो मेरी आवाज आ रही है? हेलो आवाज आ रही है? तुम ना देखो तुमको हेलो कैन यू हियर एवरीबॉडी कैन हियर मी हेलो 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 डॉक्टर लेविन हाउ आर यू
Hello?
चल
Yes, we can hear you.
but I think that there's problem in the recording. I don't have this space, तो आप recording कर दो वहाँ पे घर पे. Zoom recording is not possible.
Okay, I will do that. Dr. Jack Lewin, I think he is not connected yet.
Just say hello. Good morning, good evening, everybody. We are trying to connect as soon as possible. We'll start with 2-3 minutes time.
Good evening, sir.
Okay, Rosalind, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this invitation.
Hello, Dr. Levin. Dr. Monan. Hello? Dr. Lewin, can you hear me?
Dr. Lewin is not connected.
No, he's connected. No, he was connected. Now he's not connected.
Hello? बताइए. अच्छा, आप नर्सिंग केयर प्रोवाइड करते हैं क्या?
Chanchal, why don't you interact? Hello, good morning, everybody. Good evening, everybody.
Hello? There's something wrong with the meeting because I think no one can unmute themselves.
Now it is possible. Now it is possible to unmute. Now we can
Okay.
hear you Vivek, very well.
Okay, Dr. Mohan, good morning, good evening.
Evening.
I think Dr. Lewin, we're just waiting. He's trying to connect again. He's getting disconnected. Let me talk to him.
ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಹೆಂಗ ಆಫ್ ಮಾಡೈತಿ ಮತ್ತ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಆನ್ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕೀಗ ತಡಿ ನಾ ಆನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ಸತ
Yeah, are you not difficult to connect? Is it? No, but you have to just click. You are there. You have to click the. So I'm sending you on the mail. You have it on the mail on the computer. I have already sent the mail. Yeah. I'll send that again to the mail. Okay. Facebook पे लाइव चल रहा है देखो. Good morning, everybody. We're just waiting for Dr. Lewin to join, and then we'll start the presentation.
All right, I'm here.
Okay,
I got
good.
it. Thank you, thank you.
Sorry for the 10-minute, 15 minutes delay.
Sorry.
So let me introduce once again the topic for today. This is webinar series 14 in a row, and I'm really thankful to my friend Dr. Jack Lewin from USA, Dr. Mohanan, who is already connected with the President-elect CSI from India. And this time we have two dignitaries, Mr. Vinay Sahasrabudde, who is actually the National BJP Vice President and Member of Parliament, and active member of RSS. And then we have Mr. Som Prakash, who will be joining a little later, who is the Minister of Commerce and Industry in Government of India. Doctor, join karo. Join kariye.
Yes. I can hear.
So what I'm going to do is that I will, the same thing that way we have to start, myself I will do, and then there will be two more people to join. We'll start with myself, then Dr. Jack Lewin, Mr. Som Prakash. At 6:45, Mr. Vinay Sahasrabudde, who is a member of parliament, will be joining. Then Dr. Helder Pereira from Portugal, Dr. ML Gupta, then Dr. Mohanan, Yashpal Sharma. Dr. Rosaline is a new entity, just welcoming her. She's a young pulmonologist from Apollo Hospital, New Delhi. And she'll be talking a lot about her experience in Apollo treating COVID patients. And then there will be Madam Apeksha Yadav. She is actually a scientist research associate in Indian Council of Medical Research, and Dr. PK Asokan and Dr. Chinmay Gupta and Charvi Jain. So we will try to start the presentation. Jack, if you allow me, let me start my presentation, which will take another 10 minutes.
Sure.
And then I request you to join to speak. And in between, if Mr. Sahasrabudde joins us, then he will take up and he will be staying for another 15 minutes so he can listen to half of your talk in between, because he would be very happy to listen to.
Okay, very good.
Yes. And so I'm going to start the slide share. And I think Apeksha Yadav has joined. I think she has not yet joined. Okay, so I'll start the screen now so that I can brush up the information which we had earlier. So we have been talking about this disease since November 2019 when the Wuhan came, but we started our webinar from actually April. And we have been conducted successfully. This is the 14th in the row, and today is July 18th. So if you see the global perspective, today, if you see the India globally, it is 14 million people affected. Nobody thought in March, especially when in February, when Mr. Donald Trump, your president, came to India, he was not expecting that this explosion will take place in July. Lockdown, unlockdown, economy disaster, deaths. You see that today the deaths are 100,000. This is global. If you see the global perspective, when we met on 3rd July, and in fact before that it was 11 million, and today 12 million, that means 1 million increase within 15 days. America, as you know, we are affected. India is catching up. If you see, this is actually July 3rd, and today India is number 3. It has gone beyond Russia. So India condition is not so good. And this is the Indian perspective. You see the 5th June, only 200,000. And today, on 18th July, we have more than 10 lakhs, which is 100,000. To 20,000, sorry, 100,000. And every day we are seeing about 30,000 new cases. Whether this is because of or is it because of something else? I have to unmute everybody, unfortunately. Chinmay, please unmute everybody and then you can unmute. America, I think the things are getting better. Dr. Jack Lewin will tell a little later. But overall figures are very high. if you say in crores, I will say 3 crores 77 lakhs. So you can talk in million, 37 million. And deaths are pretty huge, 1.4 million. So I will just read out initially the 10 points draft, which has actually Hindustan Times has said that they want to target the testing. If you see, we have previously targeted 50 million by 15th August, which may be difficult now. That means testing is a very important portion. Enforcing the fear of mask, wearing the mask, hand hygiene, social distancing, and 3.5 months of wearing masks, perhaps even gloves, using sanitizers, washing hands, social distancing. Everybody tired of this, but we have to continue this. Draft a vaccine plan. What is our vaccine plan? Have we invested in vaccine companies? I'm talking of Indian thought process. Or we have struck deals with them, with the US has rolling out billions in terms of dibs on the vaccine when it is developed. How we have placed vaccine orders. We have to appoint a chief scientist or COVID commissioner. This is a thought process coming from one of the news journalists, and we're talking about. And then we have a plan of reintroducing daily briefings on how India is doing. But media is doing a lot, but may not be, information may not be completely correct. Frame rules for focused lockdowns. As the virus rages through India, a new bunch of hotspots will emerge, showing cluster of infections. The only way to deal with there is to lock them down, but using a standard protocol that builds on learning from the 68th day national lockdown. So Parliament, okay. So coming on to today's highlights, after US, India has done most COVID tests. This is White House has reported today. And we have 2 types of testing, which I'll tell you. A grim milestone, 77,000 new cases in US. 77,000 new cases in US. Is it true? I don't know. This is Jack will tell me a little later. Jack, are you on? You can interact in between.
I'm here. I can hear you. Yeah.
So why is still lockdown? Because the graph is still going up. Although Delhi graph is little better now. So coming on to the Indian Council of Medical Research, this is something which is new, which we did not discuss with you last time. They have put an August 15 deadline for the vaccine. And this has been criticized, or it has been debated a lot in India, that how is it possible that there are new vaccine research means R&D, then animal experimentation, in vitro experimentation, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials. So whether it is technically or logistically possible or not, so a lot of debates. So finally, Indian Council of Medical Research said because they have Bharat Biotech and Zydus Cadila. Bharat Biotech is collaborating with NIV Pune and also with Indian Council of Medical Research. They've started the human clinical trials. But when we think of the overall clinical trials, they take long time because initially phase 1, which is about less than 100, then phase 2, which is in hundreds, and phase 3, which is in thousands. So I think you'll elaborate a little further about this. Rapid testing, which is introduced in India, is a little of concern because it has a very poor sensitivity. And if we see Delhi, I am not able to show the graph. The graph is going down because now earlier it was 4,000 cases per day, approximately 5,000. Now it is only 1.5 thousand or 1,500 to 2,000 cases per day. Rapid antigen testing, which gives the test in half an hour, is actually having a very poor sensitivity. That means even Apollo Hospital, when they say, when some patient comes to us with a negative and rapid antigen, they say, please do RT-PCR before we hospitalize you. Because a positive report of rapid antigen is good, but negative is not a benchmark. So this is a problem with this. And now Delhi is testing, basically the government is testing mostly with rapid antigen. And that may be the reason why the numbers are going down. I mean, this may be false assurance. We all using PP kit. Apollo Hospital is fully equipped with 300 beds in Delhi. And as I showed you earlier, we're doing angioplasties, economy. Just to give a highlight to the people who are new here about the virus disease and how antibodies are formed. You see, one interesting thing which I've come to know during few days, that even those patients who are infected, the immunity does not last for more than 2 months. And that means a person who got infected today, after 3 months or 2 months, is again prone for infection. Whether this will be true for the virus vaccine, we don't know. So two types of antibodies are produced, IgM and IgG. IgM antibody disappear at the end of 12 weeks, while IgG antibody can last for a long time. So this is just to tell you, but of course, we still are losing a lot of patients because of acute respiratory distress syndrome. Cytokines time, storm is there, but there are medicines to prevent it, like tocilizumab, which prevent the cytokine storms. Clinical symptoms are important, but there are false positive RT-PCR also, false negative RT-PCR also, but we have to depend upon a CT scan, which is one of the important tests. And radiological diagnosis is done by the CT scan. This is a classical picture of ground glass appearance of CT scan. So testing in India is dependent upon RT-PCR test, rapid antigen test, and antibody test. Antibody test is only for the people who are actually now only used for the people for the plasma donation. Earlier, it was also used for the purpose of seeing that how much community transmission is taking place, but that is not being done now. So, as I told you, rapid antigen antibody test in hospitals, offices, PSUs, this was initial guideline about 3 weeks back, that they want to see finally that who are the people who are actually infected. So today I was seeing that this is the old slide, but day before yesterday, 3.5. Now we are testing about 35,000 per million, which is, of course, half of what US has tested, 60,000, but still it is quite a good number. But we have to be a little cautious. Most of the tests are rapid antigen tests, and which, as I told you, is having a poor sensitivity. Government knows about it, but there is no shortcut because RT-PCR still takes about 6 to 8 hours minimum. And in government setup in India, you will be surprised to know, because of the huge workload, sometimes it is 3 to 4 days, the testing report is not completely available. So this is a little unfortunate. It's a large country. It's not easy to manage. I give full credit to the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi ji, and Ministry of Government of Health and Family Welfare. They're trying to do the best. So 35,000 per million is a good test, but that includes rapid antigen. I would like to know from USA whether they are only doing RT-PCR or they are also doing rapid antigen test. We are also testing virus load, which shows that how much this patient is infective. So I'm coming to the last point of my presentation. I'll finish in 5 minutes. That is how the virus goes inside the cell, where hydroxychloroquine works, where remdesivir works, and where other tocilizumab works. This is the slide. Chinmay, please unmute other people. I have made Dr. Chinmay Gupta as co-host. So medicines, as you know, when we treat the patients, we give hydroxychloroquine. Still we are giving, but there is a lot of confusion in this. I don't want to go to details, but hydroxychloroquine for prophylaxis, there is still no doubt. And I still recommend all my patients to take 400 milligram twice a day, 1 day, then repeat 400 milligram once a week for 7 weeks. Now 7 weeks is over. It's continuing process to once a week or continue till the pandemic is over. Ivermectin is also available in India. We have remdesivir available, favipiravir, but we are very much dependent about remdesivir. I personally started 2 cases with remdesivir, and the patient did well. Tocilizumab, when the IL-6 is high, we already routinely check IL-6 in all the patients who have pneumonia. In Apollo Hospital, in other hospital also, if the patient develops pneumonia, we always do D-dimer and also IL-6 levels. If IL-6 levels are high, we give tocilizumab initially. And of course, some data has come regarding colchicine, which is very new data. Inhaled nitric oxide is very, very rarely used. Not going to details, I told you hydroxychloroquine today. If you see that there is a doubt of this in usage, but of course, we are using in prophylaxis. But in my patient personally, if QT interval is normal, I would like to give it for 5 days, 400 milligram twice a day, and then for 200 milligram twice a day for 5 days. It has a activity, it has a proven antiviral activity, and there is no doubt that it is so safe otherwise. A lot of data came from US earlier that the mortality of the patient treated by hydroxychloroquine was higher as compared to others not treated. But those were the patients who were very sick and they had not checked QTC interval. This is what I personally feel. So coming on to the other part of my talk, which is repurposed medicine. And as I told you that a lot of repurposed medicines, ivermectin is a repurposed medicine. Then of course, antivirals are also, which were earlier proven for SARS and other virus, Ebola, we are using it. Remdesivir, I told you, is an intravenous antiviral medicine. Favipiravir is an oral antiviral medicine. And phase 3 trials have started. It's available in India now to be used. Teclistamab, I told you, is IL-6 inhibitor, which is only when you are having high levels of interleukin-6. And then, of course, you have colchicine, which is new. I'm not going to detail, which has anti-inflammatory activity, and some people have told that this may be useful. And initial treatment plan, we always give vitamin C. No doubt, you have to increase the immunity. We have to give zinc. We have to give hydroxychloroquine, and we have to give azithromycin. This is the planning which I always give in all the patients. When we see a drop in SpO2, we give oxygen. If we see that patient is still having, then we shift the patient to ICU. Home quarantine has been very much propagated by Indian government. That means those patients who are asymptomatic should remain at home. They should not panic, but they keep checking the SpO2 levels. There is a word known as happy hypoxia. That means the patient, sometimes they don't know that they are dyspneic and they are hypoxic. If the saturation goes below 90, 95, then we have to do a test. We have to shift the patient to the hospital. Vitamin C, zinc, healthy diet. One more thing which we are personally advising is some Ayurvedic preparation, which is Chyawanprash in India, and which is quite good, useful for immunity increase. So we do SMS, sanitation, masking, and social distancing. This is there. And masks, of course, I told you 26 March, I spoke on TV, 29 March, that everybody, I got a call from the government. Jack, I would like to tell you, are you listening? Dr. Jack?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so I got a call from the ministry, and on the day after we did the last webinar, they wanted to take my opinion regarding the unlockdown, which they had done in the first week of June.
Yes.
So I said, at that time, the Delhi was peaking. I mean, not peaking, but the curve was going high and high, 500, 6,000 cases per day. So I said, doctor, I said it has been a little premature from Indian side to do the unlockdown. And I explained the reason why. They said the death rate in COVID-19 is much less as compared to the death rate what Ebola and SARS-1 had. I said, but I said that it is easy to say the death rate is low, but when the family person is lost within 15 days or 10 days, you feel bad. So as a doctor, I feel that unlockdown should have continued, but economical issues were there. Similarly, in your country, it was not easy to continue lockdown, and lockdown is not the permanent solution. So wearing a mask at home is there's vaccine. I think I will take up not much. There are 145 vaccines being tried world over. About 30 or 40, I think 25, 30 are in clinical human trials. I would like to spend 1 minute for the viewers, because you see development of vaccine takes long time. Why Dr. Fauci is still saying that it will take not before the end of the year? Because once you have done in vitro and animal testing, you have to start the clinical trial. And for the clinical trial, as I would like to repeat, the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 is a clinical trial where you have to test in patients less than 100, selected patients. And if you find it is efficacious and without any side effects, a lot of vaccine will be finishing off at phase 1 only. If it is efficacious and without side effects, then of course you go to phase 2, where you enroll at least multinationally enroll at least between 100 and 1,000. And if you are successful in finding free of side effects, which takes about 3 months, then you go to phase 3, where you have to test the same vaccine in at least thousands of people. And when you are successful with free of side effect, there are two things, efficacy and safety. And when you are successful, then you can launch it in the market. And then drug regulation, and then of course, launching the large scale production, which takes another few months. So this has been the true story with other vaccines which have been launched. And you never know whether vaccine will last. For example, influenza vaccine lasts only for 1 year. That means immunity lasts only for 1 year. You have to repeat it. So there are a lot of things to learn from this vaccine, because this is a new vaccine. And this August 15 deadline has been quite debated and quite controversial, but they say they wanted to repeat it. This is the last presentation I would like to see. If you see this slide, I think it's visible very rarely. If you see the Chinese This is phase, if you see the color, phase 2, this is in phase 2, the Chinese Wuhan Institute Sinopharm, they are in phase 2. There is no vaccine which is in phase 3 except for the Shinova vaccine and CanSino vaccine again from China. And then AstraZeneca from Oxford University is also in phase 3. This is very interesting because all others are in phase 2. Yellow means phase 2. And there is still none approved, but this is showing, this slide is showing that Beijing Institute of Biotech has one vaccine which is approved. Whether they're using it, but still not available worldwide. So we have only 2 vaccines which are Chinese vaccine, which are in phase 3, rest all are in phase 2. So we have to wait quite a long time before with this. So I think I should give now my talk up to my friend who will talk more about this. And lockdown has been spoken many times. And at this point of time, at 6:35, I would request Dr. Jack Lewin to talk in between, because Jack, I will take you in between again and again. So you are there for 2.5 hours. And then plasma treatment. This is one thing which I want to discuss. India and Delhi has made a plasma bank. That means there are patients who donate and they do in the refrigerator. But today only one of my patients is struggling to find plasma, despite the plasma bank is running here and there, because we do not have so many donors. So, I mean, although it's good to write in the newspaper and see in the TV that plasma banks have opened in LNJP hospital, it has opened in Delhi, but still, despite everything, because the patient requires plasma, we have given remdesivir, but still at this point of time, we are still not able to get plasma to everybody. Further, all the hospitals are not approved for plasma treatment. So last slide, as I always do, overall mortality, which was 2.3, is about 2.7%, 3% in India. Worldwide is same. Our mortality has come down. This is a good thing news, that earlier it was 4% and yesterday it was 2.7 as reported by the Ministry of Health overall. But of course, more than 80 years with cardiac disease, with diabetes, they are at high risk. I think I finished my point here and I stop sharing my slide and I come back to the mic and see Dr. Jack Lewin now seen very visibly here, looking very handsome as usual. And now he will start beginning his talk. And before that, let me further introduce Dr. Abdul Rashid Khan from Pakistan will be speaking again this time. And I will request him to speak. Then Dr. ML Gupta from ICMR, Dr. Roslyn Bali. And if we get in between our guest of a member of parliament, in between, then I will take him because he has limited time today. And the minister is actually traveling in his area. He said whenever he get a good network, because he's in his constituency, he will join. And Dr. Ramesh Gulla from Karnataka is also one of the active speakers this time. And so I will now request Dr. Jack Lewin. Let me introduce Dr. Jack Lewin once again. He has been a very important person for USA for the purpose of not only for recording, but also paper. He's a principal and founder of Lewin and Associates LLC. He is a health science innovation and policy in New York and chairman of National Coalition on Healthcare. I don't see your face. Why this has gone?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
You are here. Apeksha Yadav has joined. She was a little late in joining. She was supposed to introduce me, but I introduced myself. So Dr. Yashpal Sharma, I can see. So I will make a spotlight. Okay, so you are there. And Dr. Ramesh Gulla has also joined from Karnataka. He will tell his experience. So we have a wide variety of people here joining us. And then I would now request, so I'm sorry. And he's also chairman of National Coalition on Healthcare, Washington, D.C. He's a formerly chief executive officer. It's a very important post. He's a formerly chief executive officer of Foundation, New York. And also the formerly president of American College of Cardiology, Washington, D.C. So we have two ICMR guys speaking, Dr. ML Gupta and Mr. Yadav, and two people from Apollo, and a lot of people are listening. And this is Facebook Live, not only in our site, also Facebook Live in Indians in Paris, which has more than 25,000 audience. So I think I keep speaking unless somebody stops me. So now Jack will have to have the privilege to stop me, and Jack will start taking, and then I will in between I'll keep introducing other people. Please, Jack, please go ahead.
Very good. Thank you, Vivek. How long do I have right now?
You can speak now for another 5-7 minutes. In case I get our member of parliament, then I will just tell you that he will take us, and then you'll come back.
Just interrupt me whenever then. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Vivek. You know, it's amazing to think that we're only a little over 4 months into this pandemic here in the United States. It's come a little bit later for India, and I want to congratulate you on the amazing progress you're making in India. And I think, Vivek, you have made that clear that you've really come a long way. I would have to say that start off the talk by saying that the United States, as wealthy as it is as a nation, was absolutely unprepared for this pandemic. We didn't have enough personal protective equipment. Our testing that came out of CDC failed, and so we were very, very far behind with testing when this began. The city of New York, where I'm speaking from today, which receives millions and millions of visitors from around the world constantly. New York has the highest density of people in the United States, so it was obvious that New York was the epicenter of the original infection. I just want to point out, though, that now 4 months later, New York City and New York State are actually in the best position in the United States. The positivity rate, we're doing 60,000 tests a day still here. Positivity rate is less than 1%. The hospitals are functioning normally again. We don't have a crisis in New York. And the reason is because the population here, more so than in Texas, in Florida, in California, elsewhere in the country, the population really complied with the public health measures that were recommended. People did safe distancing. People wore masks and are still wearing masks. And we followed the basic kind of public health measures that have brought this infection under control. Plus, we had much more access to testing than other parts of the United States. And that's due to the leadership in this state, I think, of our governor, Governor Cuomo, and others. In contrast, in Washington, the president left the whole thing up to the governors in the various states, and the governors didn't respond very effectively in most parts of America. And that's why we have 70,000 new cases a day still here in the United States. And the EU wisely says the American passport is no longer the golden passport. You can't go to many countries in the world today from the United States because we have done such a poor job of managing this infection. And I must add, because this is a physician focus here in this meeting, and we're doing a lot as doctors, we're learning more about this disease. But the public health protection measures are really what is going to make the difference. And New York City is a perfect example of that in the United States today. We're the safest place to be, go across the country, ironically, here in New York. So let me just give you some updates over what we've learned since the last time we talked. Here in New York, Mount Sinai did autopsies on more than 100 patients.
I just welcome Mr. Vinay Sahasrabudde has joined.
Okay.
So
stop for now.
No, don't stop. You continue for some time.
Okay.
Mr. Vinay, नमस्कार. आपको मैं welcome करता हूँ. मैं पूछ रहा था इनको. I want him to speak for another 5-7 minutes, 10 minutes. He will be there with us. And I request you, अगर आपको बहुत जरूरी काम ना हो, I request you that you may stay on for a little longer because a lot of people would like to see your personality.
All right. Well, so continuing on, in New York, Mount Sinai University did autopsies on more than 100 patients with COVID and did complete total body analysis. And what we found, to our surprise, was clotting phenomena present everywhere in the body, in all the major organs. I mean, we know now, of course, that the coronavirus has a unique ability to damage the platelets and to affect endothelium, to do endothelial damage, and to cause multiple embolic phenomena around the body. Young people die of obviously, of pulmonary embolus and various other kinds of embolic phenomena when they didn't get very sick, really, with COVID symptoms. We also know about the Kawasaki phenomenon with children with severe vasculitis and inflammatory disease 2 weeks after asymptomatic infections. We've learned that here, at least in the New York area where we have a much better data because we've been dealing with this longer, that over 40% of people are asymptomatic and experience no symptoms. And so they're walking around infecting others, which is why the management is so important. But now that we know what we're doing, the therapy for the disease is changing. We're at now 3.6 million people infected that we know of in the United States. That number is probably less than half of how many people are really infected. And we've had 140,000 deaths. We realize now, though, that this is interesting. Looking at the New York data again, comorbidities are all important. There are some people who get COVID and die of embolic phenomena who are otherwise relatively healthy. But if you take an 80-year-old man or an 80-year-old woman in the United States and they have no comorbidities, their chances of dying of COVID are about the same as a 20 or 30-year-old person. So it's really comorbidities that we need to be watching out for. And cardiovascular comorbidities are probably the worst in terms of predicting severe reactions and the risk of death. So it's important for us to understand that, because if people without comorbidities of all ages seem to do well, they may get sick, but they don't die. And that's something kind of encouraging for us, because we need to recognize that there's a lot we can do by selecting people who are going to do poorly. Now that we know that the immunity levels may not last longer than 2 to 3 months, then some great concern has arisen, because will a vaccine have to be repeated 4 times a year to be effective? We don't know the answer to that. But many academic centers in the United States are now shifting to therapeutic measures. With the relative success of Remdesivir, people are now looking for other antiviral approaches to therapeutics, because we're not sure what's going to happen with vaccines and the relatively short potential immunity. We also don't know, though, whether people who have low levels of IgG 2 to 3 months later might not be able to mobilize their immune system again when they're challenged with the virus based on T-cell memory and beta cell memory. So it's possible that immunity, even with low levels of antibody, could recur. We just don't know. There's so much going on that we don't understand. I will just kind of bring you back to the cardiovascular side of this, because while this is a respiratory disease, the autopsies tell us that the coagulopathy part of the disease is maybe more important for us to think about now. But we have learned that we believe now that for most patients in the United States, we're going to be using aspirin, we're going to be using dipyridamole, 50 milligrams QID or IV, and we're going to add heparin to that, because we're seeing that this may in fact be the best way to treat the coagulopathy issues, the embolic issues of the disease. So in addition to Remdesivir and tocilizumab and so forth, in fact, we're actually shifting to dexamethasone for the cytokine storm in many places, because it's so cheap, it's so available. We still haven't seen great success with hydroxychloroquine, but we're watching what you learn in India and using hydroxychloroquine as a prevention measure. That hasn't really been tested in the US. We don't find it to be useful for acutely ill people. But this is still the first wave in the United States. We have no idea when the second wave, what that's going to be like when it comes later. So we're really going to have to focus on long-term on public health and prevention. We do know, though, that patients who have low levels of vitamin D are much more likely to have severe morbidity. And we know that people with blood type A are as well as morbidly obese patients in the U.S. So we're looking at that. But I think that we have to measure for cardiovascular-wise. We should be measuring troponin levels, looking at CP and looking at CRP, because if we can identify that early, then cardiovascular care therapy may benefits the patient a great deal. We've seen many patients here present with myocardial infarction or advanced heart failure. These were pre-existing conditions in many of these patients, but we also see people who have not had any history of cardiovascular disease who come in with cardiovascular disease. I've been recommending that we use thrombolytics instead of PCI for people with STEMI-like symptomatology, because we're also treating some of the embolic phenomenon with the thrombolytics, and it's a much more, it may be more efficacious. So we're changing our therapy there, and then adding the aspirin, the dipyridamole, and the heparin is going to be, we think, make some changes in terms of improving morbidity and mortality. I'll stop right there and get into more details later with you, but I think that we're all learning together on this, and I want to again congratulate India on the progress you've been making.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jack. And I will actually, with the due permission from Honorable Vinay, there are one thing which I wanted to show one slide, and then after that I'll request Dr. ML Gupta, who is about 80-year-old person, who is ex-Assistant Director General from Indian Council of Medical Research and a professor in King George Medical College, to speak about 5 minutes, and then I will request Honorable Vinay to take over and tell his message. But I want to share one slide which you showed me regarding this slide which I wanted to. This one. This slide again I repeat for the interest of the audience. A lot of people have joined for the Facebook. That as of now, the only thing what we can do in the absence of vaccine, I again reiterate, is to bring down the mortality to less than 1%. If we can reduce the mortality to less than 1%, we have won the Corona war, for which I am going to give a presentation to Honorable PM. And when I told you that I received a call from one of the ministers, what best can be done. So if we can properly utilize three things. One thing is timely testing of home quarantine patients. That means D-dimer and of course CPR levels regularly, because we have seen patients who are very good, doing very well, and fifth day they don't reach hospital also, and they have embolic phenomena. So D-dimer testing every second day. This is my personal thought process. And other inflammatory markers. If patient is having even minimum requirement of oxygen, IL-6 should be tested. So these drugs should be properly and promptly used. If we can use promptly hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, remdesivir, fevipiprine, toximodap, then we can certainly reduce the mortality. What is happening is, because of the actually overworked hospitals all over the world, we are not able to finalize the protocol. So I am making a protocol and I will send it to WHO as well as to our Ministry of Health, where we can really. I stop share here. Now I invite Dr. ML Gupta. Vinayji, just give me another 5 minutes. He's a very good speaker, and then he will speak about his experience about the repurposed medicine, and then after that I will request Honorable our Honorable Member of Parliament and National Vice President. I've already introduced you very well before you joined, from BJP. He's a very active worker and he's a very important part of BJP as of now, which is ruling party. So I request Dr. ML Gupta to please give his views regarding the clinical trials, because what he wants to tell, he has worked extensively for 28 years in Indian Council of Medical Research. He wants to share his points regarding what best can be done to expedite the clinical trials in the present pandemic. Because normally when you put any medicine for the clinical trial, you have to go through the Drug Control Government of India, then your ethical committee, ethics committee, whether they are still required or can be shortcut and reduce the red tapeism, so-called. I'm not criticizing, but this is a lengthy process. Dr. ML Gupta, please go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I am Dr. ML Gupta from Lucknow. I am an alumni of King George Medical College, Lucknow. I entered medical college in 1955 and passed MBBS in 1960. After that, I did MD Pharmacology in 1963, then joined Department of Pharmacology, KG Medical College, Lucknow, under the tenure of Indian Council of Medical Research. There I stayed there till my retirement in 1988 as Assistant Director. During this period, I have published more than 100 research publications, papers in various prestigious journals of the world, including America, Canada, Britain, Belgium, Holland, East Germany, West Germany, Japan, and Japan and Philippines. And most of my research publications are still being cited after 40, 50, 55 years of their publication in various journals, in various books, in various articles, in various reviews, in various yearbooks. So we were the first to show or experimentally prove that Bithania somnifera lunar, popularly known as Ashwagandha, was able to protect development of young adenomas or cancer in the mice by pre-treatment of mice with Ashwagandha. In 1986, this paper was published in the International Journal of Food Drug Research in 1986, published from Holland. This paper is still being cited in the world literature in the year 2020. So, in that paper, I have also shown that it increases the immunity in the mice. It has an immunostimulant effect, and this drug is now being sold as an immunostimulant in the Indian market by various firms, Ayurvedic drugs and other things. This drug is popularly sold in the Indian market as a Vrindavataka tonic, but it was never shown that it has any anti-cancer or cancer protective effect. I have also tried this drug in many cancer patients who were receiving chemotherapy, and it did definitely reduce the side effects of chemotherapy. Now, coming on, the COVID-19, I have suggested to our government, central and both states, to try a very old drug which is being used for the last 70, 80 years in Indian system, in Indian allopathic system or modern medicine. And millions of patients have received this drug. But because of strict protocol for conducting clinical trials, it still awaits permission. I request the government to relax the rules and regulations for conducting clinical trials for old drugs about which everything is known, including toxicity, including duration of action, including duration of stay in the blood, in the body, elimination time, ED 50, effective dose 50, everything is known about this drug. And this drug is one of the safest drugs available in the Apache. But still it is not being cleared because several rules and regulations, it should be sponsored by someone, it should be. Why one would sponsor a drug which is already being sold for the last 70, 80 years? But I request the government to relax the requirements for conducting clinical trials. That has to be done. The drug has to be added only along with the protocol, with already which is being given to the patient. Simply the drug has to be added, and effect should be seen whether it reduces the signs symptoms, whether it prevents the appearance of signs and symptoms of COVID, whether it reduces the requirement of.
पहले क्लियर करना चाहता हूँ कि अगर कभी मुझे ऐसा लगेगा कि टाइम नहीं है वीडियो बनाने.
Hello, whether it reduces the mortality, and if it's found effective, then it will be boon to the entire suffering community of the world. The time is taken when I suggested this. The total number of patients in India were only 13,000. Now it is crossed more than 10 million, 10 lakhs. See, imagine the time which is being taken to grant permission for a clinical trial of this drug. I just would request again earnestly to grant permission at the earliest for clinical trial. That's all.
Thank you very much. Let me again introduce other panels, but before that, I would like to say that Dr. ML Gupta is my father, and I have worked all through him. He has been teacher to many people, especially the alumni from King George Medical College, including Dr. Naresh Trehan, so many people who are there who are King George Lucknow, and he has taught a lot of us. And his actually contribution to research has been quite immense. So we are waiting. He's waiting for actually approval for a medicine which he has already proposed, and we have spoken to the people, and they will, I think, do it fast. So coming on to the back to our, he was just telling about how the research, and he was the first to prove the ashwagandha, which is now being sold by our Patanjali, and his paper only showed that the importance of immunity enhancement and also anti-cancerous. So coming on to our next talk, I invite Mr. Honorable Vinay Sahasrabudde ji, who is a member of Parliament Rajya Sabha and National General Secretary of BJP and associated with RSS, very important part of Indian government. And I would request him to speak. But just before that, I give the mic to Mr. Som Prakash, Honorable Minister, will be joining soon. He's in the constituency Hoshiarpur. Dr. Helder Pereira from Portugal will join. Then Dr. P.P. Mohanan, who is the President-elect CSI, will speak few words. Dr. Yashpal Sharma, who is the HOD Cardiology from PGI Chandigarh, will speak. Dr. Roslin, who is a pulmonologist from Apollo Delhi. Ms. Apeksha Yadav, research scientist in ICMR. Dr. Asokan from Kerala, and Dr. Chinmay Gupta. So now I hand over and request with my folded hands to Mr. Vinay Sahasrabudde ji to please start his talk and give us spiritual, social, political, whatever way you can talk and discuss about this COVID-19. This is our 14th webinar in a row, and I was being topper all through. I have topped all through, and it's a passion for me to learn and teach both. So learning and teaching go simultaneously. Today, we are learning from America, from Italy. We had people from earlier Germany, Italy, UK earlier. This time we have Portugal also. So please, Honorable Vinay ji, to please start his deliberation.
Thank you, Dr. Vivek Gupta ji, and all the doctors who are present over here. And as I'm told, many more are perhaps watching this kind of a discussion on Facebook Live.
Yes.
So all those whom perhaps I cannot see, but those who are attending and curious to know about what exactly do I have to say. First of all, my namaskar and greetings to all of you. And it is with profound sense of gratitude that I'm addressing the doctors community because your services to the society, especially during the pandemic times, are extremely important. And everyone in the society is thanking you from the bottoms of their hearts. And without the doctors coming and leading us from the front in our fight against COVID-19, we would not have been able to keep the numbers limited as what they are. I'm told just around 1% or maybe somewhere around that. And this is something very, very remarkable for the entire global community of doctors, I must say so. And simply, if I look into as to how this was achieved, I believe it is because of our conscious attempt, not just the doctors, but perhaps those who consider that we have to pay back to the society. And with that particular approach, most of the doctors and others as well who are into healthcare are working and overcoming, as I understand, 4 important crises which are plaguing the societies world over, because these kinds of crises are not confined only to India, but perhaps they are everywhere. And what are these crises which I believe in these times we need to overcome? Many of the doctors have already overcome, and the society will have to be conscious about our fight simultaneously against these challenges as well. or the crisis, if I may describe them. These are the traits in a way. The first is, as I understand, as a student of social science, is the crisis of purpose. I'm in politics. Many of you are doctors. There are people who are into social work, social service. And when anybody asks a question as to why we are doing what we are doing, why are you in the profession of a physician, of a doctor? Why am I in politics? Why somebody X, Y, Z in teaching, or why somebody is in any other professional service? Then apart from our professional objectives, we generally keep on saying, I'm working for the society, I'm working for a cause, I'm working for a lofty ideal. And then comes the question, people may not ask it very bluntly, but people really have that question, a lurking question, if I may describe, in their minds as to, are we really working towards that? I mean, if somebody tells me and I respond that I'm working for the society, that would the question come, really? And we will have to gather courage to answer this question. Am I really doing what I'm claiming to do? Is the purpose behind the activity professionally in which I am engaged the real purpose, or it is just a kind of something which I keep on saying, but perhaps not able to do or not able to function the way I am supposed to? And therefore, the genuineness of the sense of purpose is something very, very important. And therefore, there is a crisis of purpose, as I describe it. I mean, people do the things routinely, but many a times as a tick mark activity without any passion having poured into that, without any commitment many a times. And I'm happy during the COVID times, most of the doctors, the physicians have responded to this challenge in a very dignified manner and rising to the expectations of the people. And I must say that majority of them have overcome this crisis of purpose, which is in a way taking all the professionals in its grip. Entire society at times I find in the grip of this very profound crisis of purpose. But I am happy we are overcoming that. But we have to be mindful of that many a times we keep on doing the things routinely simply because they have become a part of our schedule of our professional life. But the very rationale behind that particular thing is missed out. And let us ensure that we don't miss that rationale. What we are doing for any kind of a lofty ideal before us, let us be true to that ideal. That is the crisis of purpose. That is the challenge of the crisis of purpose. From this crisis of purpose emanates another challenge, which is the crisis of authenticity. Our lives have become so very formal, and in formality, there is an element of artificiality as well. And therefore, we are at times losing the very verve of human life. And we don't realize that, because devoid of that verve, devoid of that naturality, devoid of that genuineness, we are in a way accustomed to live in an artificial, if I may say, air bubble kind of a thing. Because everybody is artificial, and therefore we don't consider artificiality as artificiality. We consider what is artificial, in fact, is natural. And therefore, we don't realize that there is a crisis of authenticity. Many a times in any metropolitan city, when we meet and greet, we ask, how are you? But if I really decide to answer this question to somebody who is asking me, how am I? Perhaps he may not have the time to listen to me. That is a fact of life. Because it has become a formality. And when it becomes a mere formality, it loses the meaning. And therefore, it loses the element of authenticity also. Many a times we come across, and more so in politics and social, our rubbing shoulders in a particular gathering or in a particular conglomeration, when people interact with each other, if somebody behaves politely, people don't take his politeness on the face value. They believe that there is some agenda behind this politeness. That is how we have become so very skeptical. We are not able to take the things on their face value because we believe that we are vulnerable of being cheated or deceived. And therefore, there is a crisis of authenticity. Nothing appears authentic. Everything appears ornamental, artificial, temporary. And this crisis of authenticity is again, I believe, haunting societies world over. And we will have to be wary of that in our professional and personal lives. We will have to deal with these challenges. And the second challenge, as I said, is the crisis of authenticity. The third is the crisis of ownership. Because when your purpose is not very clear, or maybe there is no authenticity in the purpose that you claim behind your activity, then naturally what happens is that you refuse to take the ownership. Many times I come across many people, doctors included, wherever they are working, it may be a big hospital, maybe an institution, maybe a medical college. They keep on blaming people around them, the institution in which they are, or the organization in which they are, or the society in which we are, or the colony of which we are a member. We keep calling names. We keep abusing our own people who are surrounding all of us. And we don't take the ownership, as if all the bad things, all the negativity, the entire negativity is the making of somebody else. And we have not contributed into that. That is the impression that we would like people to carry, which is not the case. The entire situation is also our own making. And therefore, we will have to take ownership of our family, of our society, of our housing colony, of our people at large, of our country. I mean, if we don't take ownership, who is going to take the ownership? I come from Maharashtra, and in Maharashtra, we people, and perhaps not just in Maharashtra, but all over the country and even world over, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and his reputation is well known as a person of who was committed towards his duties towards the people, and he was known for his good governance as well and his ability to govern as well. And when in a particular literary work on him, Shivaji is Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj is asked to define what is monarchy, what is a king, and he had in Sanskrit described king as Upabhoga Shunya Swami. What is Swami? Swami is the owner. And Upabhoga Shunya means somebody who is taking the ownership without any self-aggrandizement, without any personal benefit as such. It is just the ownership of the responsibility. We cannot shrug off the responsibility. We cannot distance ourselves from our responsibilities. And therefore, this crisis of ownership is also something which we will have to be conscious about and ensure that it doesn't, in a way, encroach our way of thinking. And therefore, this is the third. And the last point that I'm trying to make is, perhaps at the basis, at the foundation of all these three crises is the crisis of relationship. And you know how omnipresent it has become. It is in our families, it is in our institutions, it is in the organizations where we are. And in a way, it is the product of the first three crises. If you are not able to deal with the crisis of purpose, the crisis of authenticity, the crisis of ownership, you must be undoubtedly expecting a crisis of relationship. Because relationship is all about ownership. Relationship is all about authenticity. Relationship is all about purpose. And therefore, these quadruplet of challenges or the crisis, I think, is something we will have to ensure that doesn't take us in its, I should say, iron grip and kills the very spirit of human life, which is all about having a purpose, having an element of authenticity, having a sense of taking ownership of the surroundings in which we are, and also about blossoming of relationships at every other stage and in every other kind of atmosphere, in every other situation. I am happy while dealing with the COVID-19, most of the physicians, the doctors, the healthcare community have, in a way, demonstrated that we can, for sure, overcome the crisis of purpose, the crisis of authenticity, the crisis of ownership, and the crisis of relationship as well. And therefore, here I am on the request of Dr. Vivek Gupta, addressing you with a deep sense of gratitude. Thank you very much.
नमस्कार. आपने जो बोला, I think this is really shaken up our own souls. ये बिल्कुल fact की बात है. When we say how are you, you are actually not talking. It's just a reflex. आपने जो भी बोला वो कोविड-19 क्राइसिस में जो काम करने वाले हैं, चाहे पुलिस हो, चाहे डॉक्टर्स हो, चाहे नर्सेज हो, उनके लिए बहुत स्पेशल मैसेज दिया. आई एम वेरी थैंकफुल टू यू. आई वुड लाइक यू टू स्टे बैक फॉर सम मोर टाइम, just 10-15 minutes. And Apeksha Yadav is actually waiting. She was late. She was supposed to introduce me, but there is no introduction. But still, she would like to say a few words about herself and myself. And I give her only 1 minute to talk about it. Apeksha, can you talk now? You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hope you get my voice.
But we cannot see you now, but
We can hear you.
Okay. So, yeah, hi.
We are not able to see you. You have to open your video.
Yes. Now you see that? Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. So, good evening, everyone. Hope you all are doing well in the pandemic COVID-19. Myself, Apeksha Yadav, and I'm working in IECR headquarters, New Delhi. And I would like to thank to Dr. Vivek Gupta, Chief Interventional Cardiologist, Chairman Indo-European course on revascularization, President MI International Heart and Healthcare Foundation, Chairman Indo-European Intervention Council, Chairman Indo-European Medical College and Charitable Multi-Specialty Hospital. I would like to give you all a brief introduction about a very famous cardiologist, about Dr. Vivek Gupta. So as usual, he's a working 25 years experience in his field. He has several firsts in his name, including the establishing the multi-vessel angioplasty and stent, and also was involved in the initial work of TAVI, non-surgical aortic valve replacement, in late 90s. Dr. Gupta mostly worked in examination in India. He was selected for the prestigious fellowship in France and was trained by one of the most eminent cardiologists, named is Professor Alan Kreber of the world in the skills of angioplasty. He was the youngest in the age to attain the position of senior interventional cardiologist in prestigious Indraprasth Apollo Hospital, New Delhi. Dr. Gupta has performed thousands of simple and complex angioplasty stent during his 25 years of experience in India and abroad, which has been crucial in saving huge number of patient lives. He has several research papers to his credit and has his first research publication during internship, which is very early part of medical career. Professor Gupta is a teacher, and to help the cardiology community, he has established interventional teaching program like Indo-European course and revascularization, which is also in the process of providing training to state government doctors, which will affect improvisation of Indian healthcare. He is an excellent human being and tries to help everybody. He has basic instinct to poor people. He has been associated as the founder president of a charity foundation for the past 21 years, which is doing exemplary charity work for more than 50 lakhs of poor patients. Now, so he is also proposed to Indian European Medical and Research Institute, which will be established soon in various cities of India. So Dr. Gupta, he's a great orator. The audience gets spellbound during his speeches. He has been invited as the speaker in the most of the international and national cardiology conferences. He's also invited in national non-medical platform for political and social debates. He's a professional work, like he has associated with Indraprastha Apollo Hospital in 1998 and carrying out the clinical and invasive work of coronary angiography, balloon angioplasty, stenting and valvuloplasty and pacemakers. He's a founder president of Charitable Foundation also.
Okay, thank you so much, Apeksha. It was, I just wanted to...
Actually, there is a very huge introduction about you.
Okay, thank you, Apeksha. Thank you, Apeksha, for giving me this sort of a privilege there. And I want now to other people to join. Thank you, Apeksha. I will take you later on regarding your views on pandemic. And Dr. PP Mohanan, is he available now? He wants to see some other place also. I think he's not available now. And then we will take... Dr. Yashpal Sharma is here. And Dr. Yashpal Sharma, would you like to come in and say a few words about how you're treating patients?
Yes, Professor Gupta. It's my pleasure to be here, and I am happy that our PGI protocol, which we discussed in the first webinar, is now being this one followed all over the globe. And you know that in the initial stages, there was resistance, but now this strategy has been proved to be so useful. As Honorable Mr. Vinay Sahasrabudde, he has said that philosophically and rationality, you should treat the patients. Because I was telling this strategy earlier also, about a decade back, when we did this one acute coronary syndrome and sepsis with comorbidities and shock patient. So basically, at that time, we analyzed that primary angioplasty is nowhere superior to precision pharmacoinvasive and rescue angioplasty. We had a lot of data, more than 1,000 cardiogenic shock patients with comorbidities. So based on that experience, we advocated that at this COVID time, we should not go for primary angioplasty, which we started saying from the December onwards, when it was in China, Italy. But at that time, there was no immediate response. But response came when we had webinar, teleconferencing, and at that time, Professor Jack also, he immediately agreed that this should be the strategy. And where this strategy has been applied, like UAE, they have won the war. They have declared this war now totally free. And even in the hospitals where this strategy is going on, the number of cases, mortality is decreasing. With the mortality, the case fatality ratio and infectivity ratio is also coming down. Basically, this strategy is helping in controlling the pandemic as well as improving the healthcare system, industry, and economy also. So this will prove we are making a full this one of our all research which we have done, and that will be compiled, and basically some of these are copyright and patents also. So these will be now this one for future for research also, that how we can decrease the mortality in cardiovascular diseases, in acute coronary syndrome, and with comorbidities. So this will be very new research which will open a new era and for the government policies and for all the interventional cardiologists. As you know, one of the senior cardiologists immediately said that there is no primary angioplasty should be done. But when rationality, I told that in all those trials where PAMI was done, primary angioplasty, no patient with sepsis and shock was taken in that. So basically how you immediately pick up that, which we picked about 10 years back when we were also doing primary angioplasty, but the mortality was 5.6%. Our rescue and pharmacoinvasive mortality was 2.6%, including all age, comorbidities, and everything. So that was our catch point, and from that, then onward, we did a lot of research for cardiovascular as well as other patients, where we were giving consultation for cardiac consultation, like chemotherapy, cancer patients, elderly patients with other patients. So everywhere the mortality was decreasing. So this will be a new era that in future we will be able to save 1 million to 2 million patients every yearly, even when the COVID is over. So that will be a new thing. But unfortunately, we lost so many patients, more than 500,000. So that is basic tragedy. In fact, if we would have applied this strategy from the December onward, the mortality would have been in few thousand, not in this 500,000. So that's my, this humble, this one, I am really happy from this, that by the grace of Almighty, the whole of the universe, whole of the globe, all cardiologists, they are having this approach, and it is basically saving so much human lives and humanity, and that will have a lot of impact in further decreasing the mortality and also gaining the confidence of the young doctors who are becoming cardiologists or other doctors. They will be more now. Otherwise, this panic and other things, they were creating such a scene that people may not be going into the medical profession. But now the medical profession, as government is also considering it to be at a higher level, so that will also be at par with other services, which will be a very good thing. And you have done a very wonderful job combining whole of the globe and making it on the Facebook, Twitter, so that everybody got benefit even in the remotest part. So that is, I really admire your effort, Professor Vivek, which will be very useful for this treating and this controlling this pandemic. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Jack also.
Thank you, Dr. Yashpal. I think you have been always advocating a thrombolytic therapy, and I think you're perfectly all right, because you have, I mean, there's no doubt that we have to treat the primary, the acute MI, but whether you can take it directly to cath lab or not has been an issue, and thrombolysis therapy is good enough. So at this point of time,
I just want to add one thing. By this approach, we could do such a super chip complex cases which were refused by surgeon, which were not fit for with ejection fraction of 10-15%, and all refused by surgeon. Those strategic angioplasty by one vessel, two vessel, we could improve their ejection fraction from 10 to 45%. That was an approach that when you are very selective and do very strategically, you can treat the very sick patient. The primary angioplasty, angioplasty, otherwise not primary angioplasty, this will surpass the CABG cases, because if you include cardiogenic shock and the case is refused by the surgeon, then the angioplasty will surpass coronary artery bypass surgery. So that is another new this one finding. If you take only elective this one cases, then CABG was coming slightly higher in as compared to angioplasty. But when you combine all comorbidities, all cardiogenic shock, all sepsis, all these COVID patients, and the patient refused by surgeon, then angioplasty will become ahead of coronary bypass surgery. So this is a new, this one we are telling our DM fellows and all.
Jack, please comment briefly.
Really a new, this one I'm telling you, new innovation.
Okay. Jack, please comment briefly, and then we'll take another speaker.
Sure. Well, I think he's speaking a very smart assessment of the situation. We really have to be flexible in how we treat cardiovascular disease in COVID, and I think that while thrombolytics have been used successfully because for two reasons, there's multiple embolic phenomena throughout the body, and thrombolytics may actually enhance the therapy beyond the cardiovascular complications. But on the other hand, I think we're also understanding that many patients are presenting with cardiovascular circumstances, and they need to be treated with the best technology. I think this will be an evolving area of scientific inquiry, but I think that I'm pleased to hear the reasoning and the sound judgment that Dr. Yash just expressed.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Now we move on to the next speaker. I would like to stay back because we are trying to wind up quickly, but another 4 or 5 speakers are there. So may I introduce our fellow colleague, Dr. Rosaline, who is working as a pulmonologist, and she has been one of the brave corona warrior because she has been in PPE kit taking rounds of the patient. I was doing a video consultation, but as a respiratory team, she was part of the team, and they had a weekly system that 1 week this pulmonary physician will go, another week somebody else will go. So just share in a few minutes time about your experience in treating the patients. We have already discussed about the treatment modalities, but your experience in treating the patient when you go physically with the PPE kit.
I am Dr. Yashpal, consultant pulmonology, sleep and critical care, working in the Apollo Hospital, Delhi. I would like to thank Professor Dr. Vivek Gupta sir for giving me this opportunity to speak about my experience of managing COVID-19 patients. Well, in our hospital, we started managing and admitting COVID-19 patients in the last week of March. Initially, we had around 100 beds, which included both ward and ICU beds. At that time, we were admitting all category of patients, including mild, moderate, and severe. Presently, we have around 300 beds, and we are mostly admitting moderate to severe cases only, as per the government COVID guidelines. I'm part of a, like Sir said, I'm part of a COVID team. It comprises of mostly respiratory physicians, medicine physicians, and an anesthesia team, and a very dynamic and dedicated team of cardiologists, of which Sir Dr. Vivek Gupta sir is very proactive in managing our patients. Initially, when we had admitted these patients, we used to mostly manage them with, first, apart from sending all initial labs like CBC, KFT, LFT, CRP, ferritin, D-dimer, DIC profile, ECG, chest X-ray, and in some patients, additional tests like tropi, procal, or blood culture reports. We used to treat them with tablet azithromycin and hydroxychloroquine. Apart from vitamin C, vitamin zinc supplements, some symptomatic medications, low molecular weight heparin in therapeutic doses. For a brief period of time, we have also used medicines like doxycycline and ivermectin in patients who could not tolerate tablet hydroxychloroquine or azithromycin due to some contraindications, say prolonged QT interval or G6PD deficiency. Any patient, all these patients were initially admitted in ward. Any patient who required oxygen, we used to give them oxygen supplementation via either nasal prongs or face masks. In such patients, we used to start steroids. I have myself very good experience of working with methylprednisolone, though nowadays there are many people who also advocate dexamethasone, but somehow I have felt that methylprednisolone is very good over dexamethasone. So steroids we added, and we upgraded low molecular weight heparin from just prophylactic to therapeutic doses. Apart from some symptomatic medication like giving them bronchodilators in one form or the other. If there was increase in oxygen requirement, we would shift such patients, say if it was more than 6 to 7 liters, we would shift such patients to our ICU. And there we usually start such patients on NIV or HFNSE support. And apart from that, we do some further testing, like we send interleukin 6, or we might even go for HRCT chest to rule out some certain complications which we have seen in COVID-19 patients. But now situation has changed a lot with the advent of many newer antiviral drugs, like Sir has already spoken about. Most importantly, I would like to stress here on remdesivir. I personally have used it in many patients and I have seen very good results. If used timely in both moderate to severe cases, it has shown very good benefit. It is given mostly for 5 days in moderate patients, but in severe or ventilated patients, we give it for around 10 days. But of course, we have to keep a watch on KFT and LFT. And another newer antiviral agent, which goes by the name of favipiravir and has been recently launched in India. I don't have much experience about giving this medication, but the trials done outside seem to be very promising. And this is also one medication which is being now slowly used in centers across Delhi. In some patients who still continue to deteriorate despite this treatment, and who have lab parameters like severely rising CRP, severely rising ferritin levels, interleukin-6 levels, or oxygen requirement is going beyond, like the patient is not even maintaining oxygen saturation well on NIV or HFNSC. We give a medication by the name tocilizumab. It's an interleukin-6 receptor blocker, and it is especially given in 2 doses, 24 hours apart, total 800 milligrams we can use. And I have seen some promising results with this medication too. And finally, if such severe cases, they don't do well despite all this medication, all this treatment, we have to intubate such patients. We are not very, like we try to manage them without, without ventilation, because I have myself experienced that ventilated COVID patients don't do that well. And when we intubate them, it's mostly for 2 reasons. One, if a patient goes suddenly into respiratory distress. And secondly, patients who can't maintain their saturation despite being on HFNSC or NIV support. We manage them on the lines of ARDS. Many complications are seen, usually barotrauma pneumothorax, which is managed by ICD. Then there is septic shock, sepsis, and majority of times we see many cardiac complications in them. We have a very proactive team of cardiologists headed by Dr. Vivek Gupta sir, and I have very good experience of working with him. He has been very supportive and always given vital inputs to me regarding managing cardiac complications of such patients. Here I would also like to add that we have a plasma trial going on in our hospital. Plasma therapy, as you may all be knowing, is the new kid on block, and promising results are seen with giving plasma around 2 doses in patients who are moderate to severe and require oxygen and have oxygen requirement. We are doing it as part of plasma trial therapy as per the ICMR guidelines. Till now, we have recruited around 80 patients across 6 centers in India, and the results are still to be analyzed. But my personal experience is that it shows some good results if used very properly and very early in patients who are moderate COVID-19 patients. In patients who go on ventilator or who become very ill, maybe it is not that much promising, though we still use it in those patients. So in nutshell, this is how we manage our COVID-19 patients. Here I would like to stress that in COVID patients, we have to be very proactive and not delay our decisions, like starting remdesivir or giving plasma, or suspecting cytokine storm and giving tocilizumab. So whatever we decide, we have to be very proactive in that, and we have to do it. We have to just always be on our toes and do it quickly, because COVID patients don't give us time. I have seen patients who are like 1 day on 2 liters oxygen, but just by next day or just by same day in the evening, they tend to be in frank respiratory distress. So we have to be really proactive in our approach. This is how, yes, I would also like to add about a brief word about antibiotics. We usually manage, antibiotics don't have much role, but yes, sometimes in patients who tend to have sputum production, purulent sputum production, or who are febrile, or who have positive procal, we start with simple antibiotics, like we could start with augmentin or ceftriaxone. We upgrade antibiotics only in case of severe or critically ill patients who go on ventilator, or show some signs of infection, like being in septic shock, rising TLC count, being febrile. So this is where the role of antibiotics come. Appropriately, we send blood cultures and procal at that time. So in short, this is how we manage COVID patients in Indraprastha Apollo Hospital. Guidelines keep on changing, and so does our management protocol. as according to government guidelines.
Thank you, Rosalind, for giving a very good insight of the treatment protocols. Just two things I would like to add if Jack is listening and Dr. Yashpal is listening and other people are listening. That actually there is very important to act quickly in patients who are moderately sick. This is one point. Many times when the patients are in the wards and we are not able to actually diagnose whenever there is a hypoxia, or if suppose 95% saturation is being taken as a normal level on a 4-liter oxygen. We had one patient who was admitted in the ward and he became a little more dyspneic, and although saturation was still 92, 93, but I thought that I should shift him to the ICU for better care and NIV support or BiPAP support, and with, of course, the injection remdesivir. This is one thing, that the hospital, and such things are going to be missed out when there is a huge pressure on the doctors, especially in government setup. I'm not sure, I'm quite sure also in Europe and America. Second thing is those patients who are home quarantine, and sometimes we take them very lightly that, okay, everything is fine. And these patients are not being tested regularly for CRP, D-dimer, and the hospital doctors, and sometimes there's a call coming from the government setup, okay, are you all right? Oh, all right. One thing is happy hypoxia. If they're not measuring the saturation, sometimes the saturation keep going down and they land up in a moderate disease with a severe pneumonitis, and then we tend to lose them. Third important point of death and mortality is actually pulmonary embolism. And this is actually being missed out. If you are having a slightest, even 2 times D-dimer, guidelines are changing, but we as a doctor can say that the D-dimer, we have to regularly actually screen all the patients, or if not alternate day, every 3rd day. If we find that it's going up, then we have to start or from prophylactic enoxaparin to a therapeutic dose. And that is very important. I have seen patients who are home quarantine suddenly rushing to the hospital and they are dead. So such things are happening. So pulmonary embolism, other than acute MI, and sometimes stroke, because the basic nature of the virus is prothrombotic. So IL-6 is, of course, an inflammatory marker, but D-dimer is a marker for the increased thrombogenicity, and therefore we have to start this enoxaparin. That's why I was thinking that we should make a draft plan with Apollo and other people and send it to Ministry of Government and everywhere to WHO. The purpose is not to develop vaccine. The purpose is to reduce the mortality. If we can reduce the mortality to less than 1%, it is acceptable to all of the world. Because of course you cannot save everybody, but this is our goal. Jack, your few quick comments from your side, and then we'll take the next speaker.
Yes, thank you. I think you were absolutely right, Vivek, to say that we have to be treating first, tracking hypoxia, because the virus directly attacks the endothelium and various organs, the kidney, the heart, around the body. But it's hypoxia that is causing the damage in the brain, most people. So look, treating hypoxia when it develops using pulse oximetry. 2, check for the risk of embolic phenomena. As I remarked about the autopsy reports here in New York, virtually every patient in the autopsy had microembolic disease in their lungs, and scattered and widely scattered, and in other organs of the body. So treating embolic phenomena. Inflammation has to be treated. And then again, measuring using the markers like that we mentioned here today, dexamethasone or tocilizumab or whatever you need to use, but you've got to treat that as well. And then cardiovascular disease needs to be treated as if it was present in the absence of COVID. So how we go there, obviously there's some ongoing research needed to look at the difference between PCI and fibrinolytics, but these are very important things. In cardiovascular disease, we're obviously wanting to measure troponin as well as CRP, but also echoes have been valuable in patients in the US. We weren't using echoes for some time. We are now thinking that many patients with cardiovascular risks should probably have echocardiography, even though there is a risk of infecting the healthcare workers. And on therapeutic side, we're learning a lot, and we should get to that less than 1% goal. I agree. One thing we haven't measured or haven't talked about that I just want to mention, because when we really get down to this, we're in the business of taking care of people who are very sick, and particularly in the cardiovascular complications of COVID. But we really need to be thinking about the public health and prevention side foremost. And as physicians, we should be leaders in helping countries figure out how to prevent this disease. And obviously people are looking at things like vitamin D and zinc and pulse oximetry for patients who have early symptoms. But testing is going to change. We're now using PCR tests, as you know, and the results take days often to get the results back. Soon, I believe we're going to have available to us CRISPR tests, both for the antigen, the virus itself, and for antibodies that can be done with an oral swab that will give results in 5 minutes and for very, very low cost. So we're going to have better ways to test. We also are going to have now in Finland, in the US, in Australia, and in Israel, we're developing breathalyzer tests that are currently being seen as having 90% specificity and sensitivity. And this may be, we believe we're going to get this up to 95 or 96 or 97%. So we may have very inexpensive means of testing with a breathalyzer test for just a matter of a couple of euros, but frankly, just $5 in US dollars. So there's going to be new things coming. And as we watch for vaccines, I just want to mention, we need to be looking for therapeutics as well, because we don't know if the immunity is going to be as short as 2 to 3 months, then we really may need to look for therapeutics as well as vaccines in our future. I just want to say at the end that what we've seen here in New York with compliance around public health is we've been able to really control this pandemic. And so let's not forget the public health measures, because as physicians, we're seen as leaders. We want to make sure that our political leaders make the right decisions. Thank you.
Just a quick question to you. I missed out when you were speaking about the rapid antigen testing. What are you testing now? Are you still only doing RT-PCR testing or some other test? Because as I told you, in our country, we are using rapid antigen testing. It is again a swab, but gives results within half an hour, but it has a poor sensitivity. So what are you testing there?
We're using PCR testing in New York. You get the results back from PCR testing in less than 12 hours. So we're doing a rapid response for PCR. But in the near future, I believe we're going to replace that with a 5-minute result with the CRISPR technology that is coming soon. So that should be here by September. We're testing with
only RT-PCR. As of now, only RT-PCR.
Yeah, PCR as of now is the only antigen test being used. However, antibody tests are being used widely in the U.S. now to understand what the level of infection is across society. So antibody tests are being used very widely as well. PCR for acute diagnosis, antibody tests to monitor those who have been infected and who may have protective antibodies. So we're doing both. But I think in the future, all these tests are going to be replaced by better technology in the very near future.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Our friend, Dr. PK Asokan has joined, but I'll request him to speak a little later. Dr. Gulla is a new entity for our new invitee for this. Dr. Gulla, can you open your video, and then Apeksha will talk about ICMR a little. Dr. Gulla, are you available? Can you open your, yes. So Dr. Gulla is basically a clinical oncologist, a surgical oncologist, sorry, working in Karnataka. So I will request him to speak a little about Karnataka, how the crisis being managed in your country, in your state. Can you unmute yourself, Dr. Gulla? Please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Dr. Vivek. Can you hear me?
Yeah, of course. You are perfectly loud and clear.
Yeah, greetings from Karnataka. Karnataka is a 6 crore population with the capital Bangalore, and we have already reached 55,000 new cases and 1,000 deaths already. Now it is, once upon a time, it was a very safe state. It was in a green zone state. It was a model state, in fact. Our Prime Minister Modi ji had congratulated our Chief Minister Yadurappa for having conducted such a wonderful containment job against this COVID-19. Unfortunately, we are now in trouble for various reasons. I believe it happens with every geographical region that one or the other time the population has to go through this COVID infection. And right now we are just second to Maharashtra in the number of daily deaths, and that is a very disturbing fact. In fact, the government had managed it very well for 4 months, from March, April, May, June. It was a wonderful job. They had organized a COVID war room, which was backed up by computerized system and mobile approaching system. It was including various governmental officers to track the contacts, primary contacts and secondary contacts. That was a wonderful job that they did. And after what happened after the unlocking, and the poor migrants who came back from Mumbai, from Dharavi, they kept Dharavi better and made Karnataka worse. And we are now suffering. Sir, it is a fact. And now the migrants came on foot. They crossed the border, the huge border of Karnataka on foot, and they bypassed the quarantine system. And now we are having in villages, the COVID-19 is in the villages, in the towns, in the cities. Bangalore is suffering. The Bangalore has no, it is a very, very disturbing thing. The patients are suffering, they're not having any beds, ICU beds, though the CC, the Corona Care Center, but still the patient care is suffering. What happened? The government had followed testing, tracking and treating. That's all right. But the tracking for 4 months, the government apparatus got fatigued. Now they are the efficiency which was there for 4 months is now has disappeared in last 15 days. The number is too many. So it is overwhelmed the system. And as far as the testing is concerned, the positivity rate is 15%. That is quite high, which is a very not a pleasant situation. The WHO says it should be around 5%, but we are having 15%. That is very, very disturbing thing. Right now, the government is doing 300 tests per day per million population, which is double the WHO recommendation of 150 million. 100 million. But now the government is doing its best, but we can't depend only on RT-PCR, which is actually still, as it is being proved, it is time consuming. The reports are coming late. There is a huge backlog, and now the government has fall back upon the rapid antigen test. Now it has formed 150 mobile vehicles to reach the people who are unwilling to come to the government hospitals, fewer clinics. They want to test it at the doorstep. That's a very commendable job. That's a very good plan. Now the situation of testing them is likely going to improve, and that is going to give a very good impetus on containment thing. And now what is the stress has shifted from containment to the treatment aspect, and now in the treatment aspect, the mortality rate is still 2%. That is very, very good compared to 2.7% of the national average. And now that needs a very commendable comments from the treating doctors in Bangalore, in elsewhere in Karnataka. But still, we need to bring down the central government instruction has come through the Chief Minister that the hospitals and the ministry cabinet has to work hard to contain the mortality rate to below 2% or to below 1.5% right now. But what is the problem? The problem is in the whole system. The system is breaking now. What is happening is the government is doing its job as such, but the management team, that is doctors, nurses, and the nursing homes, etc., they are facing a lot of problems. For example, out of 380 moderate to big nursing homes, 60 hospitals have closed down. That is because of 30% of doctors have left the job and 50% of paramedics have left the job. That is a very, very disturbing thing. Why it is happening? The government thinks that by giving extra salary or more salary or incentives, they can rope in the doctors. That is foolhardiness. They cannot do that. The doctors are not after money, and I want to tell it again and again. Working in the state for 20 years, I know that the doctors are not after money, which is the media is misleading the people here. But what the government should have done, that is not being done. The government should have instilled the confidence into the treating doctor and nurses. That they did not do. What they did was they are giving hydroxychloroquine and they're telling the people that you will be protected. But have you not it is already gone, that it is not helping people, that the people are dying still with the hydroxychloroquine. What did the government do? They are just blindly following ICMR. That you continue with the zinc, continue with the vitamin C, continue with the coronial, continue with the herbal medicine, take some homeo pills. Will that work? That has not working. It is not working. The people, the doctors are already on back foot. The nurses are they are also afraid to join the job. The class 4 people are afraid. They are not going to join the job. What the government should do? They should have instilled the confidence into the doctors. They should have given a modern immune booster. We do not have anything in the pharmacopoeia. In modern medicine, we do not have any immunity booster, any decent thing. We are left with only vitamin C and vitamins. That is not the thing. They should have come out with some real immune booster. For example, oral polio vaccine is there. For example, a BCG vaccine is there. For example, we have a MMR vaccine. They did not do anything. That they want they want a very scientific evidence. I want to ask the government and ICMR, did the coronavirus came with the proof in the hand, with any randomized control trial reports in the hand? They did not come with that. You have to fall back upon your own knowledge of what you are treating with the patients, what you have the information about immune boosters. That you should have used. Nobody is giving any, even including the WHO. This is a foolhardiness that you ask the doctors to treat the patients in ICUs just by swallowing some.
I think you are perfectly all right. Yeah, Dr. Gulla, very nice. Especially Karnataka, the things are so bad. We did not know. We are sitting in Delhi. Jack, this is a state of south of India.
Yes.
And earlier it was Dharavi, which was Maharashtra, Bombay. It's a big slum where a lot of people, they migrated to Karnataka, and now the things are suffering. One thing which I want to re-emphasize what Dr. Gulla has said, that the whole country is dependent upon Indian Council of Medical Research. I think that every state, because and Indian Council of Medical Research is already overloaded. Every state should be given a special ethical committee where they can decide upon the clinical trials, which my father, Dr. ML Gupta, was also saying, that his application, or his not application, proposal is when the cases were only 7,000, now it's 7 lakhs. So proposal is still pending because it has not been seen carefully by the people. And I think repurposed medicines are going to, one medicine can work out, you never know. Especially if it is safe, then there is no harm in doing the trial. So the trials are being delayed because of the so many other work I think they are having. So I agree with Dr. Gulla that the state should have special guidelines. Anything, what is your governors are doing? What is the status in USA? You have a large number of governors and you have the president USA, and then you have FDA. What's going on there?
Well, I think we have, our president has really not been a leader in this break. He has delegated to the governors to try to run, to determine how things work, including, when schools will open, when businesses can open, when society can resume a normal economic productivity. In New York, we're going very slow because we don't want to return to the infection peak we had.
I just wanted to know about the trials. I mean, do you conduct a trial only by FDA, or you have the governors?
No, the clinical trials are really being it's still managed by the NIH. So the government really, in that case, the government is overseeing most of the clinical trials. However, there are more than 100 clinical trials in process in various university academic centers, and those are independent. But most of the money for the funding of these trials is coming from the NIH still. So the federal government is really helping a lot in terms of coordinating research activities and funding research activities in academic centers and all across the country.
Okay, thank you. So I would request you to stay back. We are finishing in 15 minutes. Before Dr. Asokan comes and joins us, and we have Helder Pereira has joined, but I cannot see his video. He's from Portugal. And unless I think he will stay on for some time, or he has some connection problem, I would request Apeksha Yadav. She's actually a research associate in non-communicable diseases. She's not in the direct COVID treatment in the Indian Council of Medical Research. So I would request her to just give briefly about overall situation rather than talking about ICMR, because you're not authorized to speak about ICMR because of you are in NCD, not in communicable diseases. So please go ahead, Apeksha, you may speak for a few minutes and then you stay back.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Gupta, for having me here in this 14th Indo-European Conclave webinar series on COVID-19. Thank you. And as we all know that the government of different countries is taking all necessary steps to ensure that we are prepared well to face the challenge, threat posed by the growing pandemic of coronavirus. The most important factor in preventing the spread of the virus locally is to empower the citizens with the right information and taking precautions as per the advisories being issued by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And now we all are depending on Ayurveda in our daily life. So we are using on that. So first, that is my topic is preventive guidelines in the current time. As COVID-19 is an acute respiratory infection disease caused by the severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus. The incidence of COVID-19, all know that, has grown dramatically in China, and the virus is rapidly spread to more than 200 countries over the world. Now, what ICMR is doing, ICMR collected several data of all over the country and doing a research work. So we have a huge group of the data, and now we are deciding to give this data state-wise. So we are research per state-wise, so they can make the data in the regarding of COVID-19. So this is the, like we all know that we are on testing. So our testing group, we are giving the Bharat Biotech International Limited. So we are giving that for the research work. So now the scale and accuracy of ongoing COVID-19 testing in India are a gradual state of evaluation with new and improved kits developed by biotech companies worldwide coming into existence recently. Even the ICMR recommended ELISA, short for enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, for labs to test for COVID-19. So in this, we are doing to consult with all the labs regarding the ELISA falls under one or two broad categories of testing being used by every country around the world to stay on top of the pandemic control, like antibody testing, antigen test, polymers, PCR. So how can PCR works regarding this? That antibody testing is an examination of proteins in the bloodstream to find out whether an individual has been infected with COVID-19. An affected person will have specific antibodies to pathogens they have been exposed to. The immune system produces antibodies as a part of a larger process to defend itself from an infection. So antibody tests may not be able to show whether the virus is currently infecting the body, unlike a nasal or throat swab test also. So including this, we are connecting to the all labs in India. We are finalizing with the labs. So there are abundant antibodies are abundant in the blood. So sample of blood is collected by either a finger of prick. So as we all know that, how can we take a blood on that? So in that, IgM antibodies against SARS-CoV-2, which develops early on in an infection. IgG against SARS, which are mostly found are someone has recovered from the infection. So this is in it, and after we are using this, many of the guidelines regarding to precaution, preventive the person, like in prevention and control in schools, offices, we maintain the social distancing, hand wash face, and this we all know that the sanitization in daily life. So first we all go to the RT-PCR and another novel diagnostic methods also, like specimen collection, viral testing and antibody testing, individuals with symptoms, individual without symptoms and recent exposure, individuals without exposure in special settings, resolution of infection, and surveillance. So in this surveillance, we are doing on the antibody testing or antigen tests. So this is why ICMR doing, and now the ICMR has cumulative total samples tested is around 1,34,33,742. So this is our data analysis to doing now. So the surveillance of the disease and data analytics is that also. So prediction of COVID-19 in next 6 months, we are proceeding for the human trial to the vaccination, and maybe the Bharat biotech company is going for the better results and give a better vaccine to us for this.
Giving us a brief about everything. Hello, can you hear? thank you very
Yes.
much for giving a good idea about what ICMR. That means there's huge number of people involved sitting in the head office. I have been there many times because my father was also there associated. So that means, do you have the enough space, or you are taking some other space also?
In that we are broadly spreading for the more of the spaces for this corona samples also. We occupied, and even our new branch in NICPR Noida also. So here is also we are working for that, and collecting all the samples. So we are now proceeding for that, and as we all know that we are spreading some labs and tests with private labs and government labs to approved by the ICMR to doing this test. So we have come to a better results and give the publicly, because we all know that there are death rates are many in India. So we know that we are eagerly doing this work and maybe come in the good results as soon as possible.
Jack, may I tell you, Jack, before this pandemic, nobody knew ICMR. Indian Council of Medical Research was not so well known. So now with this pandemic, the ICMR is like a so commonly used word, and also in the media. So I think the same thing must be happening in US when you have your FDC. What is that?
Yeah, the FDA.
Not FDA, the other one, disease control, National Disease Control.
CDC.
Oh, CDC.
CDC.
Yeah, CDC. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So
CDC.
even us also epidemiological communicable diseases. So this research is all going with Dr. Ganga Khedkar in division of ECD.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Apeksha. So I was just thinking that before it's already very late, and Dr. Helder Pereira is trying to join again from Portugal, but I think it's still difficulty having joining. So let me take Dr. Asokan, our dear friend. And I will always tell him that he is the person who has pushed me to do the webinar. And after that, Dr. Abdul Rashid Khan will briefly talk about in 2-3 minutes about Pakistan status, and then we'll wind off with Dr. Chinmay Gupta and Madam Charvi Jain. Asokan, you are doing another webinar.
I have a lot of few questions to discuss. I think we already completed 6 months now after this pandemic. What we have learned now? I think we started with China, and they have published some studies showing that multiple risk factors for associated with the mortality. But the risk factors are not changed now, except we added obesity recently is one of the risk factors. Otherwise, the risk factors remain the same as far as the fatality is concerned. And what we have seen is the mortality is very high in elderly people. More than 80 years, the mortality is around 14%. Compared with the age is less than 40, mortality is less than 1%. Overall mortality is not changed with this disease. When you see now, when we have more number of cases, now all over the world is more than 1.4 million. In India, more than we have mortalities around mortality is 26,000, more than 26,000, and 10 lakhs cases reported. What we have learned now, there is no change in mortality as such. 80% of asymptomatic patients, the mortality is very less. Only 20% of hospitalized people, only 5% succumb to ICU, and total mortality is still less than 3.5%. And few patients are dying at home under observation. And we don't know what the reason for that, this cause of sudden cardiac death. Now we have to think in different way. One is to stress on preventive measures. Then you should know which patient you should hospitalize. Now we are hospitalizing all patients who are positive for COVID, whether it's symptomatic or say asymptomatic. So we are not able to give adequate medical attention for the sick patients with the COVID. Then coming to another point, now we think about there is a recent publication from UK that is online tool to calculate the 1-year death patients with multiple risk factors. Suppose the patient with above the age of 30 years, the risk factor of dying with single is around 20%. and it's over 1 year. If this patient has COVID, what is the mortality? That's how we have to calculate now. Otherwise, we don't have any specific drugs, as Dr. Vivek Gupta said, apart from the anticoagulant and some anti-inflammatory and antibiotics to certain patients, and oxygen for hypoxic patients, and ventilator for sick patients. Otherwise, we don't have any specific treatment at present. I think we should stress more on the online tools to calculate the high-risk group, to identify the high-risk group, and take a precaution and treat them specifically. That's the only way to save our economic this one, because we can't continue with the lockdown, and that will have a bad impact overall. I think it's most important thing is identify high-risk group and treat such patients. If they develop infection, treat them and hospitalize them and give a specific treatment. That's the only way. And there's no point in admitting all COVID patients, all asymptomatic patients, all patients with mild symptoms to the hospitals. I think this is a very important strategy. I think government should change the strategy. I think it should admit only sick patients, only symptomatic patients in hospital. I think that is a very important point. And you should start anticoagulant measures early, and you should identify high-risk group. Otherwise, it's not possible, because this is going to continue for many months or years, this infection.
Thank you very much.
Gupta,
Yashpal, please, very briefly, yes, tell me.
It's a very important comment that we should target high-risk patients. And second, I would just like to add the safety of healthcare workers, doctors, that is of utmost importance, because you see, if the mortality is out of infected, it is 11% among the infected healthcare workers, including doctors. So safety of doctors and high-risk patients, these are the two main things where we should work very hard and immediately, so that we can decrease the mortality and safety mortality of doctors as well as this high-risk patient.
I think we agree with Dr. Yashpal. We already lost more than 100 doctors in India. After 26 deaths, I think more than one.
About 102 doctors have been lost in India. What is the? Do you have any idea, Jack? How many doctors have died in US?
Oh, I think it's probably in as high as 1,000 doctors altogether. But we have seen a much lower rate of infection of doctors and nurses with improved personal equipment. When we didn't have enough good masks, we didn't have enough protective equipment at the beginning of COVID. Now that when we're using that, 80% of the nurses and doctors on the front line today are not even COVID positive. They haven't even been infected. So we began this epidemic without enough personal protective equipment, and we lost a lot of healthcare workers.
Can we have Dr. Rashid Khan, because last time he was in a space suit and today he's in normal suit. So please go ahead with a very brief about, because we are very late now. We want to finish in 5 minutes. Very brief about Pakistan situation as of today.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Well, actually, the situation in Pakistan is very, very good now. But we have got only one. Yes, very good now. In the sense that we have only 261,000, and out of 261,000, 198,000 have been improved, and our total mortality has reduced to only less than 50 per day, and only the infective rate is less than 2,000 now. It was just because of the good care and having the more tests being done properly, and initial treatment is being given to the patient, and the patient taking care of themselves very good. Although but we are fearing that during Eid al-Adha, there may be another surge of increasing the problem, because of the more of the person will be having contact. Now, because of the lot of restrictions on the malls and on the places, people used to have the taking proper care. Doctors having as you see, have seen me last time, even on my clinic, I was having my PPE. So I do not see any patient without PPE. I do not see any patient without mask and this and that thing. Whenever a patient comes to my clinic, I always take care that they are taking all care of the COVID. So doing the more tests, increasing the awareness, and we have able to contain the COVID in Pakistan.
How much testing are you doing per million as of today?
Daily, we are doing about 25 to 30. I can say 25 to 30,000 cases per day.
Per day, we are doing about 3 lakhs per day. But I wanted to know per million. Per million, how much is per million? You don't have right.
You can divide with 23 crore. You have got 170 crore. We have 1.7 billion. We have only 22
I'm not
crore.
saying that per million. Okay, but that means you have been able to partially control it. That's a very nice thing.
We have controlled it. But we have the fear only during the Eid al-Adha coming, that may have another surge of increasing in the COVID test.
No, because I always treat Pakistan as our younger brother. So it's a very good news that our brother is doing better than what we are doing, because we are facing a major crisis even now. Because now I think we have only 2 speakers left. Charvi Jain, very briefly, could you tell about the real estate? She can open her video quickly, because then we will have Dr. Chinmay Gupta, and then we'll finalize today's program. Dr. Chinmay, are you there? Dr. Junaid Rashid is there, but he wants to speak. So, Jack, what is the reason why Pakistan is doing better than India? I mean, what do you feel?
I have to say, if we look at the United States and the different 50-state approach, if everyone in America was wearing a mask for 6 weeks, everyone was wearing a mask for 6 weeks and keeping social distancing and respecting that, and also frequent hand washing and so forth, we could control the infection here in this country. Even, obviously we're going to have to protect the highest risk people and protect the frontline workers. But it's really coming down to using common sense in public health. And I think that's what the difference is going to be in countries that succeed and countries that do not.
Okay, thank you. Charvi Jain is here. She spoke last time also, but she's basically from real estate. Very briefly, 2 minutes, the unlockdown has been there. So do you think that you have recovered to some extent, or it will take a long time?
So the coronavirus, so the impact of coronavirus on Indian real estate has been unprecedented to an extent that it has brought construction activities to a halt, and it has significantly eroded the market of its potential buyer base. So these are the major problems that the real estate sector has been facing. So with property transactions dipped to a near zero during the nationwide lockdown, the sector is still looking at challenging times ahead. So the interdependence of supply chains, migration of laborers, cost overruns, and liquidity constraints are some of the looming challenges that have been faced by the real estate sector in general. Also, the property prices witnessed a decline of about 10 to 20%, while the land prices could see an even higher reduction of about 30%. And the rise in COVID-19 cases has impacted retail consumption as well, since people avoided crowded areas, eateries, entertainment centers, and shopping malls, marketplaces, amongst many others. So critical issues such as labor availability and weak business sentiment has significantly derailed the execution of real estate projects, especially in urban areas. Also, leasing and co-working activity has been hit tremendously. So the outbreak has pushed regular investors towards more secure instruments of investment, such as fixed deposits and buying gold. And this trend is likely to continue for the next quarter of 2020 as well. Owing to the threat of the infection, the real estate sector has already seen a decline in property visits as well from the buyers as well as the buyer interest. So all these are the major challenges that have been faced by the real estate sector.
Okay, thank you, Charvi. Thank you, Charvi. We all know that the whole industry. Jack, would you I would like to tell you that our Apollo Hospital is in a big loss at the moment. I was talking to the Vice President of Finance Department in Apollo Hospital. He said, we are losing in crore, 10 crore per month is a loss because of the overall recurring expenditure is huge in a 5-star or 7-star very high quality tertiary care setup. So this is just to share that in India, even real estate or whatever, this pandemic has brought down everything only. And as Karnataka, Dr. Gulla was saying that not only, I don't think that the doctors have gone away. It is because the management has closed the hospitals because they cannot survive. Because there is always a recurring expenditure for the smaller hospitals. What is your situation in USA?
Well, the hospitals and the healthcare system really depends a lot on the income from elective procedures. And during COVID, we do not have the elective procedures, so the income is lost. For primary care doctors and doctors in general, with patients not coming to their offices safely, and they're using telemedicine more than not, they're also very financially in trouble. So, the healthcare system is really suffering a lot because of the loss of elective procedures and the loss of inpatient visits and outpatient visits. However, the biggest problem with this is the large number of patients who fail to go to the hospital when they're having acute coronary symptoms or heart failure problems, and who end up dying at home because they did not seek treatment. We have a large number of people dying because they're afraid to go to the hospital for treatment.
Okay, thank you. The last point which I want to take, I would request everybody to stay on, including Rosaline, which I want to take is regarding to healthcare workers. You see, if you remember, the importance of healthcare workers have been tremendous, but it has been more during the Corona time, all over the world. I mean, if you remember that when you had overall is the situation in the private setup is that the feeling that the hospital is overcharging, number one. Secondly, the hospitals is unnecessarily doing the investigation. I'm talking of India. And thirdly is that doctors have not given enough time to see, and they still charge. And I hope Dr. Asokan and Dr. Yashpal Sharma and Dr. Gulla must have faced all these things during their career of a few years. So I'm taking Dr. Chinmay Gupta online. I think he's not, he was yesterday on television.
Hello?
Yeah, Dr. Chinmay?
Yeah, I am there.
Okay, but I cannot see your photo. Okay. So I'm trying to raise this point because we want to compare what's happening in America and what's happening. So if we recall that during the March episode, our Honorable Prime Minister fixed one day of clapping for the Corona warriors or healthcare workers. And that was a big boost to the healthcare workers. And when Honorable Prime Minister himself coming and clapping, and the one point time was fixed up 5 p.m. and everybody clapped all over India for just to give the higher boost or morale of the healthcare workers who were fighting COVID. Then there was a time when the patients started getting admitted to the private setup. And then there was a lot of allegations, or not allegations or complaint that the private hospitals are charging much more than what they require to. And then there was a fixing of the pricing by the government that you cannot charge for Corona patient a certain amount of money per day. Whatever you do, whatever you treat, whatever you give medicines or how many investigations, they fixed charge including the bed. I'm not saying that. Yesterday he was on TV because some people watched some doctors without mask. So I was invited on TV, I was busy, so I said, Chinmay, you please go and attend that meeting. And there was a huge uproar against the doctors when the doctors are not wearing the mask. Chinmay, you explain better because I was doing the angiography, I did not see that program completely. So what actually was a complaint against the doctors during that TV show yesterday only?
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank all the dignitaries for their expert views. Yesterday, I was on Prime TV, which is a national news channel. They had invited me for the medical views regarding COVID and increasing cases all over India and specifically in Uttar Pradesh. We all know that the curve was not flattened in India, and so. It was like this, and it was very disappointing for our medical fraternity. The media was showing like this.
Sorry, I have to unmute everybody except for Chinmay.
Okay.
Okay.
So there was some episodes in the news. There was some pictures or videos which were showing. Hello.
Yeah. Please go ahead quickly.
Okay, there was some news and there were some photos and videos in which doctors were in the news and they were not wearing masks and they were not taking appropriate measures in the hospital itself. So there was a question that since the doctors who all know that is a pandemic disease and it is not a easy thing in the market in the world. So so I think that government should change some strategy and they should awareness in the normal public as well as in the doctors as well, that only symptomatic should hospital and the rest of the patients who are asymptomatic, they should remain home isolation, and but of course be in touch with their
so the point is
Chinmay, on everyday basis.
Yeah, I understand. So Jack, this is what happened yesterday. So I mean, a small video clip sometimes makes a mole out of, what is that, mountain out of mole, something. So what is the level of respect of doctors in US? This is what I wanted to know. Our level is good, but what is happening in your country? Yeah.
I think the respect of doctors is very high. Respect of nurses is very high. And as well, here in New York City, people clap every night and bang pans at 7 p.m. to thank the healthcare workers. And so the respect is very high for the front line, for doctors and nurses.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have learned a lot today. And Ashok, any other question from anybody? I think it's time to wind up. And this last sentence, that clapping every evening, is a very, very encouraging. And I think this video clip I will send to the Prime Minister office, that we should do that.
Vivek, would you like to see one quick view of New York before we close?
Yeah, that's very important. Before I, okay. Okay, that's very important.
All right.
Yeah.
Here is New York City.
As elegant as ever. It's quite sunny day.
All right. Remember, it looks very beautiful, but the virus is lurking.
Virus is so small that you can't see. I mean, it's a sunny day. How is the temperature these days?
Oh, it's pretty warm, but it's nice.
25?
But you know, it looks beautiful, but the virus is there, so we all need to be cautious.
Thank you very much, all the panelists, and we had a nice webinar, and I'm really thankful to Asokan joining us later, Abdul Rashid Khan, Dr. Yashpal Sharma, Honorable Mr. Vinay Sahasrabudde, who gave a really spiritual talk that when you say, how are you, you don't actually mean it. I mean, you have to mean it what you do. You have to work with your conscience. It's very nice. I always, my friend Jack Lewin, and then other
very
speakers.
Honored to be with you. Very honored, Vivek. Thank you.
Roslyn and other people, and Ramesh Gulla. And I think I've not missed anybody, and Chinmay Gupta, Charvi Jain, and Dr. Apeksha Yadav. So we are thankful to this webinar, and I had to wind up this webinar. Asokan, any last word before you will finish off?
I think we had a very good session, and we had learned a lot today. And we'll see that next webinar will come out with some new drugs. I think you are doing some research activities, that's what I heard, in these aspects.
Sorry, what did you say?
No, you are doing some research. We should do some research in this. So,
So we have, I already discussed with Jack that we are jointly doing some proposals and projects, because Corona is not going to die, it's going to last. So we have to have actually, and I already discussed with him, I'll send an email to him, and then we may take Pakistan and Yashpal Sharma, yourself, and do some sort of a basic idea and guidelines. Jack, I will take your help to make a brief guideline of 14 webinars, what we can propose to the government of India and the state governments to reduce the mortality.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
And Vivek, can I give one suggestion? We are discussing about the face mask all throughout. Can we have this one social physical distancing without face mask? Is it possible? Can we think about it?
Is it possible?
Keep physical distancing, and we don't wear mask.
No. I disagree completely. It's impossible.
6 months over now. How are we going to deal with this? Because it's very
okay, Jack, please answer this question.
Yes, I think
to wear mask.
I think that
like say healthcare workers in crowded places, we wear mask. Other places you keep physical distancing and off mask.
If you're outdoors, it's much safer if you don't have a mask. But indoors, masks are very important. And if you're in constant contact with somebody close together, even if you're sitting outdoors at a table with 4 or 5 people for an hour, it's a little risky. So indoors is very risky, particularly when air is being recirculated. Masks are very helpful. Obviously, in buses, on public transportation, masks are essential. If you're outside and you're exercising, you're taking a walk, and you're staying 5 to 10 feet away from other people, masks are not so important.
Okay, thank you. But in a crowded city like Delhi, I think wearing the mask, social distancing is almost impossible. Okay, thank you very much for the overall thought process, and we will work out next week, maybe Friday or Thursday or Saturday, depending upon your convenience.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.